Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we are throwing on our genetics detective hats to tackle one of the absolutely most fascinating and, yeah, sometimes kind of confusing topics in the CSEC biology syllabus. We're looking at inheritance, gender, and sex-linked disorders. If you've ever wondered exactly how certain traits get passed down the family tree, or why certain diseases seem to totally pick favorites when it comes to gender, well, you are in exactly the right place. So let's dive right into this. So here's our big question for today. Why do diseases like haemophilia, which, affects blood clotting, and color blindness show up so much more frequently in men than they do in women? It's not just some random coincidence, right? It's actually a profound genetic mystery written right into our DNA. Take hemophilia, for example. It is famously known as the royal disease because it literally decimated the male lineage of Queen Victoria across European royal families back in the 19th century, while largely leaving the women completely untouched. Pretty wild, right? Today, we're going to crack this case wide open, step by step. Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, types of genetic conditions. Second, the sex-linked mystery. Third, mapping inheritance. Fourth, analyzing offspring. And finally, top CCX exam tips. Section 1, types of genetic conditions. Okay, it is super easy to get these two categories mixed up, so let's clear it up right now. On the left, we've got chromosomal mutations. The classic syllabus example you'll see here is Down syndrome. This is a structural or a numerical issue. You're dealing with an incorrect total number of chromosomes, like having an extra one. But on the right, we have sex-linked traits, like hemophilia or color blindness. These do not involve extra whole chromosomes. Instead, they're caused by very specific faulty genes located directly on the sex chromosomes themselves. Now, keep in mind, not all genetic diseases are sex-linked. You've also got hereditary or autosomal diseases like sickle cell anemia and albinism. Those are inherited through dominant and recessive alleles, sure, but they sit on non-sex chromosomes. And then you have physiological diseases like diabetes and hypertension. Those are generally related to lifestyle or internal body function, rather than your chromosomal count or those specific sex-linked genes. So make sure you keep these categories completely distinct in your mind. Section 2, the sex-linked mystery. All right, as humans, we have one pair of sex chromosomes that dictate our biological sex. Females have two X chromosomes, so they're written as XX. Males, on the other hand, have one X and one Y chromosome, making them XY. And here is a totally vital clue for us. The male's Y chromosome is actually much, much smaller than the X chromosome, and because of that, it carries far fewer genes. Keep that size difference in the back of your mind, because it is literally the key to everything we're talking about today. Which brings us to a really crucial definition. A sex-linked trait is simply controlled by genes located on the sex chromosomes. But because of that quirky biological fact we just talked about, where the Y chromosome in males is just so incredibly small, it actually lacks the alleles for a lot of these traits entirely. As a result, these specific genes are most often found exclusively on the X chromosome. And boom, this biological quirk answers our opening mystery. Many of these sex-linked disorders, like hemophilia, are recessive. Now, because a female has two X chromosomes, she needs two bad or recessive copies of the gene to actually show the disease. If she only gets one, well, her other perfectly healthy X chromosome steps up, acts as a backup, and totally hides the trait. But what about a male? He's XY. He only gets one X chromosome. If he inherits that single recessive allele, he expresses the disease. He doesn't have a backup. He simply cannot hide from it. Section 3, mapping sex-linked inheritance. So when you're analyzing these traits on an exam, having a reliable, bulletproof method really helps. Here is a solid 4-step framework you can always lean on. First, set up your alleles with proper symbols. Second, identify those parent genotypes. Third, sketch out your Punnett square. And fourth, analyze the resulting phenotypes. Let's actually walk through this together right now using hemophilia as our target. Okay, imagine we are crossing a carrier mother and a totally normal father. The dominant normal allele is a capital H, and the recessive hemophilia allele is a lowercase h. The mother's gametes go right across the top. She's a carrier, right? So her genotype is X capital H, X lowercase h. She's carrying one normal allele and one hemophilia allele. The father goes down the side, he's normal, so he is X capital H, Y. And notice how the Y chromosome has absolutely no letter attached to it? It carries 0 alleles for this trait. When we fill in our grid by combining those rows and columns, we get the 4 possible genetic outcomes for their future children. Section 4, Analyzing the Offspring.
So what does this actually mean for the kids? Well, in sex-linked traits, the gender of the offspring strictly matters. Looking at our results, we have a 25% chance for a completely normal female, X capital H, X capital H. We have a 25% chance for a carrier female, X capital H, X lowercase h. Now, she doesn't actually have the disease, but she definitely can pass it on. Then we look over at the males. There's a 25% chance for a completely normal male, X capital H, Y. And finally, a 25% chance for a male with haemophilia, X lowercase h, Y. Because he inherited that mother's recessive X and the father's empty Y, that single recessive allele is fully 100% expressed.
Listen, if you write down literally one single rule from this entire explainer today, please let it be this. Males cannot be carriers. When it comes to X-linked recessive traits, a male either has the disease or he is completely normal. There's absolutely no middle ground, no in between. Why? Because he completely lacks that second X chromosome to mask a faulty gene.
Section 5, Top CSEC Exam Tips.
All right, let's put you in the hot seat and test this logic out in practice. Imagine you're sitting in the exam hall and you see this. One example of a sex-linked disease is, and your options are cancer, hypertension, color blindness, or Down syndrome. We can act as full-on detectives here and just eliminate options based on everything we just talked about. Cancer and hypertension, we know those are largely physiological or lifestyle related. Down syndrome, we established right at the start that that's a chromosomal mutation, an incorrect total number of chromosomes.
Which, of course, leaves us with the correct answer, C, colorblindness. CSEC examiners absolutely love to test this specific objective, and I'm telling you, they almost exclusively use colorblindness and haemophilia as their go-to examples for sex-linked recessive traits. If you just memorize those two names together right now, you are going to be incredibly well prepared. Before we wrap up, here are a few rapid-fire pitfalls to watch out for so you don't lose any easy marks. First, when you're drawing out those Punnett squares, always use the X and Y symbols. Never just write an H or an H floating out there on its own. Examiners want to see those alleles actually attached to the sex chromosomes. Second, do not confuse standard hereditary traits like sickle cell anemia with sex-linked ones. They act completely differently. And third, look for the X factor in word problems. If a question randomly mentions a disease appearing much more frequently in males, literal alarms should go off in your head. You are almost certainly dealing with a sex-linked recessive trait. Well, we have covered a whole lot of ground today, from the basic physical structures of our chromosomes all the way to mapping out the hidden probabilities of inheritance, but I want to leave you with a final thought to really ponder on. If you were to map your own family tree using the exact techniques we learned today, what hidden genetic traits might your very own X and Y chromosomes be silently carrying around right now? Genetics isn't just dry syllabus material you memorize for a test. It is the actual, literal blueprint of your life and your family's history. Keep exploring, keep analyzing, and I will see you in the next explainer.
Get more study resources at myteacher.net.